Hello and welcome to the Chiropractic Student Podcast. My name is Lewis and we're here to talk about all the things you need to know before graduating chiropractic school. We're going to talk to experienced chiropractors and we're going to be discussing the science, philosophy and art of chiropractic. We're going to get tips and hints on how to get through chiropractic school with a deeper understanding of what chiropractic is and truly can be. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Chiropractic Student Podcast. Today we are joined by Dr. Brett Jones. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's evening for me. I think it's afternoon for you. Thank you for the time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Really simple. For those who don't know you, could you give yourself a little bit of a background? How would you describe yourself?
Chiropractic mantra: I'm a divine essence of light illuminating a physical masterpiece, delivering spiritual attunements to connect people to God. So that was my operating every time I entered an adjustment. That's who I am. For the purpose, I'm here to facilitate the reconnection of humanity to heal, grow, and evolve naturally. As far as background goes, I was an athlete all my life. I played collegiate football, did some mixed martial arts. Come from a pretty traumatic upbringing, childhood, where my brother passed in 1999, and that kind of created a big just catastrophic event for my family, where a lot of things happened after that, which included my dad losing his job from the CHP, which is the Highway Patrol. Then my parents split. My mom became very depressed and suicidal, and then she ended up leaving us, and she had been a stay-at-home mom all my life. And so there's a lot of shit that all came in like a 2 to 3 year period, and I was fucking just thrown into the chaos, man. And life was very dark at that time, and my only way that I saw out was through my athletic ability, and that's one of the reasons I pushed so hard and grind to get a scholarship to play football. And I made it in one way, trying to really provide an example for my two younger brothers who were still living, that there was a way out of the shitstorm that we were in. But then what I quickly found out is, like, all that effort, waiting for that moment where you reach that pinnacle, that mountaintop, right? Of, okay, I made it out. But then I was just as depressed as I ever was. Even though I was physically, strong and fit and fast and all the things, I was mentally unwell. And so I realized that there was a huge piece missing. And a lot of that had to do with my lack of connection to my spiritual nature, because when my brother passed in the way that he did, and then what happened to my family, I denounced God. I wanted nothing to do with God. I wanted nothing to do with religion. I wanted nothing to do with my Christian upbringing, because I couldn't understand how an all-powerful, all-present, all-knowing God could allow my brother to pass the way that he did, and allow what happened to my family to happen the way it happened. And so I believe through that massive void, discomfort, and trauma, I was searching for something that would help me reconnect to that. And I was looking through it first through the lens of religion. And so, I tried on most of the religions, and I just never really vibrated that much with it until I found Buddhism. Buddhism, I felt like I was most connected to, and started reading some books on that, and, started meditating. And then I realized that there was a spiritual path that was non-religious, which is just you and your connection to Creator, you and your connection to Spirit. And there was a few books that kicked that off. I know that you like to give resources on this podcast, so a few books that kind of got me on the right way was Paolo Coelho's Alchemist was a beauty book, and then The Four Agreements was another one. And then I also read Meditation Now by, I think it's Steve Hagen. But then in all of this, I was always fascinated by the human body. Obviously, as an athlete, it had a lot more to do with performance. And so I was, looking for the ways to get bigger, better, faster, stronger. And I studied in undergrad exercise science, and with a bachelor's in arts and sports management. And in that undergrad, I realized there's a lot I still didn't know, and I was still fascinated, and found out the more that I've discovered, the more I didn't know. And so I knew I wanted to pursue a graduate program. And for whatever reason, chiropractic just kept coming back in. And, I looked at, medical doctor, I looked at the doctor of physical therapy, doctor of osteopathy, occupational therapist and chiropractic as the primaries. And chiropractic was just the one that stood the most out as making the most sense of something that I could dedicate my life to. And I didn't know originally, while I was pursuing that it had a philosophy. And so it wasn't until I started touring chiropractic schools, I ended up at Life West as one of my tour schools, which is in California. And while I was there, I met now Dr. Ben Glass, who was a student at the time, and he had just purchased 20 books called Chiropractic Revealed. And in Chiropractic Revealed, there's an interview with the top 20 chiropractic philosophers, according to the author that wrote it, which is David Schneider, who it's a whole other crazy story how I ended up meeting him. But if you guys haven't read that book, I highly suggest it. I think it's a good peek into some of the top minds in chiropractic philosophy. And so I'm reading that book, and I'm getting the book, and then on my way back from touring Life West, I just had a moment on the plane, like an epiphany, if you will. It's like everything that I had been searching for came through this one piece of writing from now why am I blanking on his name right now? Pasquale Cirasoli, who OG chiropractor in Brooklyn. I think he practiced until he was like in his 90s, and he was still doing like weekly lectures. And but basically he had a passage in that book that said something to the effect of physically our suffering, our sickness, and our disease is non-existent. It's only we only experience this due to the lack of connection that we have to our spiritual nature. And so in that, for whatever reason, the way that it was said, it just made everything in my life make so much sense. That here I was, again, physically, doing a lot of the things, eating well, sleeping well, moving well, and yet I was still diseased. I was suffering, and I think it was because I had been disconnected from who I really am, which is that depth in spirit. And so that began my fascination and devotion to wanting to learn more about the chiropractic philosophy. And so I came into chiropractic school already starting to read green books and already kind of getting a sense of what our chiropractors did in the history of chiropractic, which is interesting because a lot of schools will teach the history of chiropractic and they kind of teach it like, oh, this is the shit that, the kind of quackery back then. I'm like, that's where the fucking truth was. And I always say this, it was like, people think that chiropractic has evolved. I think it's de-evolved in so many ways. And I say that because of this. Who got better results? Simple. 100%. But without a fucking doubt, from basically all the way at least into the 30s and 40s, right? So chiropractic originated in 1895, and then basically all the way to at least through the 30s and 40s, chiropractic was taking care of the sickest of the sick. You were going in because you had cancer. You were going in because you had tumors. You were going in because you had tuberculosis. You were going in because you had massive disease processes that were happening and getting well through chiropractic care. What does chiropractic see now? They might help with some low back pain and headaches, right? That's what most people in school are fucking teaching, and it's garbage. And the truth of chiropractic is that you are designed to heal, and you heal from the inside out. So when you put the system, right, this nervous system, this energetic system in the right internal and external environment to heal, it will. That's by design. And so what is possible in chiropractic? Well, it's the same thing that's possible in life. It's the same thing that's possible in nature. And that's my main mission now, is helping people reconnect to that, where we originated from a truth, and we've as the profession has carried on, it's drifted further and further away from the truth. How do I know it's a truth? Because I see it every fucking day in my practice, right? That by living and breathing and delivering that type of care, that is what creates the healing opportunities that humanity needs right now. To truly heal mind, body, and soul, all of it. So what becomes possible, chiropractors? Again, I look forward to the day where chiropractors are considered the highest healing facilitators in the world, because we once were. And so that's my mission. That's why I'm here.
That's brilliant. I love that background. Like, we got a whole scope of it. Amazing. You have done a lot already. Like you're still, I would say, like fairly new to the profession. Like maybe 5-10 years, is it, or something like that?
I'm in my 10th year now.
There
Yeah.
you go. There you go. And I want to come back to something you said earlier. You said chiropractic kept popping up. Would you say chiropractic came to you, or did you go to chiropractic?
Yeah, I believe it is a calling. That's a common phrase you say.
Mm.
Chiropractic chose me, right? And who and what, right? There's a lineage that we're working with here, right? Meaning that there's a lineage of hands-on healers that were connected to origins of truth, and that's also something that I continue to study. So in chiropractic school, I was mainly studying the chiropractic philosophy, the chiropractic science, the chiropractic art, which again, one of my favorite questions that I like to ask at chiropractic schools is this: you go to a chiropractic school, how many chiropractic books have you read?
No,
Right? The most common answer?
no, yeah.
Zero. And it doesn't make any fucking sense to me. Like, how can one go to a chiropractic school, quote unquote chiropractic school, and not get any chiropractic education? So what are you getting? You're getting medical education, and you're getting a second rate medical education, or really a third rate medical education, more of a second rate PT education, and almost third or fourth rate chiropractic education, and sometimes nil, right? So I made it my point that I would have more of a chiropractic education, chiropractic school than anything else. And so I read 93 chiropractic books while a chiropractic student. That's just what it was for me. And so now following that, I went into, well, who were the inspiring minds to the original, OGs of chiropractic? Because DD had his inspirations. If you want to look up some of DD's inspirations, there's a book called Spirits of Mercy by Todd Waters, one of my favorite chiropractic books that exist. And it goes into some really crazy history of DD. But in that book, they also give what DD carried in his traveling library. DD was really inspired by Anton Mesmer and magnetism. So DD actually started, that was his role before he discovered chiropractic and became a chiropractor. And really, he didn't discover chiropractic. That's a whole other story. I'll give you that too. But so he was inspired by Anton Mesmer and a lot of the people. That's a lot of people in the field of magnetism, electromagnetism. BJ was inspired a lot by the Huna philosophy, which is a Hawaiian philosophy, and was also inspired a lot by yogic philosophy. And so it's a lot of Eastern philosophy, and also again the Hawaiian philosophy. And so that's why you see the universal nature of the universal intelligence being in all things. That's not a new chiropractic concept. That's as old as time. Right. And as I study the Lakota and other native traditions here, you see that in everything. But when I say DD didn't discover chiropractic, if you read the Chiropractor's Adjuster, which came out after he died in 1912, I believe it was, DD's first book released after his death, 900-page book. In the very beginning, he attributes the chiropractic principles to, what was the name of the doctor? Dr. Jim Atkinson. Right? Have you read this?
I've read the Chiropractor's Adjuster, but I don't remember this bit.
So he attributes to Dr. Jim Atkinson, who basically attempted, right, to bring those principles forward, but was unable to because humanity wasn't ready for it. And I think he said, he attempted to bring these principles forward 40 years prior. Now, when he references Dr. Jim Atkinson was not a living being. DD never met Jim Atkinson. DD was a spiritualist, and you'll find out a lot more about this. And again, it's Spirits of Mercy. But guess who also was a spiritualist? Dr. A.T. Steele. Who's A.T. Steele? The founder of osteopathy. Founded in 1885. So osteopathy founded in 1885. Again, similar philosophy. However, it had more focus on the circulatory system. And that's the reason they were doing the adjustments, because a lot more of the energy, chi, and intelligence was communicated through the circulatory system, whereas chiropractic really focused on the nervous system. And then seeing, that innate life force impulse was delivered mainly from that, the neural impulse. And so both of them were spiritualists. And I think a lot of people don't understand what a spiritualist was. Spiritualists were in communion with spirits. through mediuming, channeling, and seance. So chiropractic's roots are very spiritual, about as spiritual as you get, to the point that the whole fucking profession came from an entity.
Jim, what was his name? Atkinson.
Jim Atkinson. So Atkinson, Dr. Jim Atkinson. There's another crazy story in Spirits of Mercy. If you read it, I believe, so Didi had 5 wives. I believe it was his 4th wife, who died and came back to life. So at the time, in the early, and especially in that time period, 1800s, early 1900s, and then especially in the spiritualist community, there was a lot of times that people could appear dead, but they weren't dead. They said they're kind of like in this waiting place and they could potentially come back to life. And so Didi, who was in Burlington, Iowa, before he made his way to Davenport, he actually fled Burlington, Iowa, because he got involved basically in a death. So what happened was he had been taking care of this woman doing, magnetism stuff. And she had gotten really sick and then she had died. However, again, during that time, they didn't really know how to process that. And so what he got involved in is that he basically held it was like a 7 to 9 day seance to help bring her back to life. And she never came back to life. And then so when they got found, she'd already been dead that long. So he got in trouble for it. And he ended up leaving Burlington, fled to get away from that situation. And similar thing happened with I think it was his 4th wife, that she was pronounced dead, and then actually on her way to get buried, what the common practice was, they would put a mirror over the person's mouth just to confirm that they had no breath. So you started to fog the mirror, oh, there's still life here, right? And so they're carrying her to be buried, and they put the mirror, and then there was fucking breath, and she came back to life. And so in this, he attributes, get this doesn't blow your fucking mind, because this is way after the fact of 1895. I think this was like 1907 or something like that. He attributes his 4th wife coming back to life to Dr. Jim Atkinson.
So who is Dr. Jim Atkinson?
Nobody knows. So I've been unable to get more details of whether or not it was ever actually a living person with historical record of him somewhere, or whether, again, is this continued channeled entity. Yeah, for that there's a blank, but that's, again, you can read it in the Chiropractic Adjuster. It's in the introduction.
Does AT still say about Jim Atkinson as well?
No, I don't think AT still has anything about Jim. I got a early osteopathy book by AT Still. Actually, I'm gonna see if is it right over there? No, yeah, it's right over there. But I like old books. I like especially so I got a lot of books from the early 1900s, and they're just falling apart. And one of the books I got was from AT Still. But I don't think there's any relationship there. I think it was just something that Didi was channeling at the time. But that's how they were doing all this work. If you look at BJ Palmer's writings, he called a lot of it was thought flashes, right? They were all inspirations. So a lot of the green books were basically BJ's morning pages. He'd wake up on average, I think it was between 4 and 5 a.m. And as soon as he wrote, he's down his typewriter, blah, 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 blah. And that's why it flows the way that it does. It was just pure consciousness coming through. And so a lot of the green books are just collections of those morning flows. And if you read them and know how to read them, fucking brilliant. But what was he doing? He was channeling. What was he channeling? He was channeling, again, a way. And again, it's tied to very historic ancestral path. And so when you say, chiropractic chose me, well, what chose you? The way I kind of see it now, is, there's going to be ones that are more of the light side, right? And there's going to be some that are more on the dark side. And chiropractic originally came from a path of helping reconnect people back to spirit. That was Didi's whole premise, right? The purpose of chiropractic is unite the physical to the spiritual. That's written, right? That's his words. And so that's what we do. And it says you unite to the spiritual, unite to who you really are. And you're uniting to, again, more of this light path versus the dark path, which is different than that. And I would say chiropractic has definitely took on as a profession. It's not about connecting people to spirit. It's about treating people for pains. And unfortunately, when you treat somebody for a pain, they never actually learn the lesson from the pain, and so they never heal. It started as a healing profession, and so again, that's like why a big purpose that I have is going into what it means to heal, because people have forgotten.
So what was the purpose of adjusting ninjas and now Kairos training culture? What was your purpose behind that?
Yeah, so a little more background. And so I go into chiropractic school, right, already reading a lot of the philosophy and history. And so as I'm reading the history and the philosophy, I'm seeing the chiropractic miracles, right? Getting to hear about why people came in. And so for people that, where do I start? Start with Our Masterpiece, volume 39. It's BJ's last book, and Our Masterpiece does a great job of kind of recollecting a lot of what had happened in the green books and all the processes and successes that were had throughout the years. So that's a great place to start. Another one for those that love science, there's a whole volume on chiropractic research. A lot of people don't know the depth that chiropractic went into chiropractic science. Nobody does what chiropractors did back then. Nobody, not amongst any field. Nobody. For instance, if you went to go see BJ, right, at the PCC, or PSC, Palmer School Chiropractic, and then also the clinic there, on average, you would get 17 x-rays, right? So you come in, you get 17 x-rays. Why they're doing stereograph x-rays? Because the way they shot them, they were basically creating 3D imaging back then, right? And how specific were they? Well, they would line you up, meaning that they would have a string, right, that they would chalk, and then they would line it up behind you to make sure every single thing was in the same exact position, so they knew exactly what bone and what was the movement. They were doing urinalysis, blood analysis. They were doing the radiography. They were doing breath analysis, so spirometry, and then they were doing, of course, the neuroencephaloma typograph, right, to measure the mental impulse. How specific were they with that? Well, they created a whole room that would get rid of any electromagnetic interference. And that room was suspended, and it was plated, I believe, in copper, so that when they actually conducted the neuroencephaloma typograph, that they would get the correct reading. And then that later went on to also then include thermography. When you got adjusted, you were laid on a gurney and you were willed away to go rest for a minimum of 2 hours. So tell me who's that specific and doing that much work and doing that much follow-up? Nobody. And so that was the fucking standard at a lot of this work that BJ was doing.
How did he see the volume? How did he see that volume? How did he see that volume of people whilst doing all of that?
Right, it's having a team. Right, you have a team.
Team.
Same thing. So another one of my favorite books that probably nobody's read, and they should, is what is it? This was a guy that had the chiropractic hospital a little outside of Denver, Colorado, had 800 beds. Oh man, the name will come to me. One of my favorites, but you can look him up. I'll make sure at the very least we'll put it, whatever show notes, I'll find it. But again, something silly, and the reason you can find videos of that actually on YouTube of people that were going to see him. He helped a lot of people with late Capherthes, especially that's I think it's a bone disease for boys often. But he was also doing a lot of work when what was the main one? We had the iron lung, tuberculosis, right? And then some other things, but they were helping people with all kinds of shit. 800 bed hospital. But the reason I'm saying all this is because I came to school reading a lot of this stuff, and so when I got to school, I was like, "What the fuck is this?" Yeah, even being at Life West, which was quote unquote principled, but debatable. I got into the clinic. I'm like, this is garbage. Because basically there was, students at the time, if you're like 8th quarter, 9th quarter student, that's when you got into clinic. Your student clinics, you're taking care of mainly first quarter students. So I get in, you get assigned an intern. My incoming class was like 55. So I had 55 students, first quarter students. And I would say out of 55, 53 hated going to clinic to get adjusted by their interns because they were getting worse. Right. And then I would observe, and I'm like, what is that? I mean, 80 to 90% of the time, the actual intern couldn't do the adjustment. And so they were having their clinic doctor try to help. And then I'd say the clinic doctor wasn't great either. So I'm like, okay, so we got all these students that can't actually deliver this adjustment. Maybe it gets better. Well, maybe they're just getting started, right? So it probably gets better when they get to outpatient. So what happens is like you have a student clinic, and then I think in your second quarter, you're mixed in with outpatient clinic too, right? So you have student clinic plus the outpatient clinic. So now I'm getting to see these interns delivering the same shitty care to outpatients. And getting again, what was the basis of why they were caring for people in the first place? Again, there's a lot of pains, right? It had nothing to do with healing. And I said, well, I came to school reading the chiropractic philosophy, getting an understanding of the art and the science, and I just kept deepening in that. Something's fucking wrong here. And so I said, well, is it that we're not getting enough philosophy? No, we had philosophy classes. And I said, well, we're getting the philosophy. All right, is it not we're getting enough science? Fuck, plenty of science. Well, it's the art. So I said, the art's massively lacking. And then, again, I've been an athlete my entire life. Basically, since I walked, I was playing some type of sport. And so as an athlete, simple rule, if you want to get better at something, you train. So I wanted to shoot better free throws. I went and shot free throws. If I want to run a faster 40-yard dash, I figured out all the things to do to help support that, running with parachutes and running with weight vest and, doing plyometrics and all the stuff. Right. And so that'd been my whole life. And so I'm frustrated, annoyed, disappointed at my school and what they're producing. And I decided, well, who's training this? And so we get into our you usually start with a palpation class and then motion palp and and diversify class and whatnot. And so when I started observing what was happening in the adjusting classes, I realized this is not training. This is posology, meaning that you're setting up on something and you're saying what you're going to do without doing it. And you're not giving anybody any of the actual muscle patterns, motor movements, neural learning that they need to actually be successful at this. So I started, actually, I think it was already my first quarter, I started interviewing chiropractors that I thought, had a level of artistry that I wanted to emulate and I wanted to kind of follow. And I started interviewing and saying, what did you do, right, to get to where you're at? And through that series of interviews, like the original interviews, like these 7 Adjusting Ninjas interviews, my first one was Arnold Bernier, right? My second one was Dr. Jen Wilhelm. And then I had Dr. Jay Comerick, Dr. Katina Manning, Dr. Jeremy Brook, Dr. Lila Wolf, and Dr. Ian Davis Tremaine, right? So I interview all these people, and this is like all my first 2 quarters of chiropractic school. And what I was looking for was the qualities, right? What were the qualities and values, right, that led them to get to where they're at? And there was some recurring themes, and there was presence, right, power, speed, depth, presence. Is it presence? Yeah. Presence, depth, power, speed, agility. And so I was like, well, fuck, if I got all the values, I can train those things. And so I basically created my own training system. I created these like little flyers, because in the library you could go and you can make copies of whatever. And so I designed this like little flyer, and I was like eight sections per page. So like these like little squares that basically said, Adjusting Ninjas training, come to the gym 6 a.m. right, on Wednesday. And I was like, we're kind of really inconspicuous about it, right? Just like handing them out, you be there, And of course I go, and I think nobody showed up the first time. It was just me, right? So it's me, and I'm doing, one leg training. I'm emulating a side posture adjustment. I'm training, the fast twitch muscle fibers, and I'm doing some of the drills that I'd seen some other places. And, so I did that. But then the next time I did it, I think I had like a couple other people. And then I kept doing it. And I started growing a little bit. And then I got some people that were interested that wanted to train regularly. And so I took a group, and it was like a group of 4 of us. It was me, John McCarthy, now, these are now doctors, but John McCarthy, Paolo Feely, Lance Von Stade was like a kind of a solid crew for a while. And I would take them in, and we would train at 9:20 breaks. We had like this 30-minute break at 9:20, and we go in the drop table room, and we just work drop table stuff and do some different trainings. And I did that for a while. And then eventually my 8th quarter of chiropractic school, there was a group that I heard was found out they were going on a mission trip. And these were some younger quarters, like 5th quarter, 4th quarter. And I asked them, why are you going on this mission trip? They said, oh, we're going to learn how to adjust. I said, no, bro, you don't go on a mission trip to learn how to adjust. You go to serve. And so I'm like, if you're willing to show up and meet me at 6 a.m. twice a week, I'll help you get trained so that you can be ready for your mission trip. I said, there's a what do you call it? There's you have to follow this. You can't be late. A stipulation. You can't be late. You can't miss. Otherwise, you're out. That's it. And so I had 12 students that joined me for an entire quarter, twice a week. Nobody was late. Nobody missed. And I said, all right, that worked well. Go do your mission trip. And then they came back and I said, you guys want to continue? And they said, let's continue. So we continued. And then we ended up adding 2 more days. So then it was Monday through Thursday, 6 a.m. And that crew just kept growing until the point that by the time I graduated my 12th quarter, I trained 86 students. And so, which at the time was about a fourth of the school. So I trained a fourth of the school on how to adjust. And that was Adjusting Ninjas. We weren't not an official club. We were an underground grassroots movement. We'd meet before school opened. And it was kind of like a fight club, you know? And so when I graduated, I didn't know if it was going to continue. I was like, well, I don't know if people are just like, you know, interested because it's me and I'm like, got some level of charisma and intensity or whatever. Or is this the system? And what I found was that when I left and I handed it off, the club still grew. I was like, oh, we got something here. And so one of the members there at the time was Lance Von State, who's now Dr. Lance Von State, practiced out of San Francisco. And he was involved with WCCS, the World Congress of Chiropractic Students. And so I graduated at the end of 2013. In 2014, there was an annual convention in Georgia. And so student Lance Von Stade helped me organize basically a 2-day seminar. We actually did two 1 days. And we were able to, I think we ended up having like 40 students each day. And, but there's like a representation from 24 chiropractic schools. And so following that, that's what then led to us being able to book Adjusting Ninjas training camps at all these different schools, because they're like, fuck, we need that at our school. And so 2014 is when we launched the training camps.
So obviously that's like now turned into the Kairos training community, the Kairos training culture. And to be honest, that is exactly how I got into training chiropractic. Like, I hated chiropractic school. Year 2, I was like thinking about quitting. I reached out to a few people and they were part of the KTC at McT. There was like 5 people at that point. Andy had just left and passed it on to some others. And I didn't know what to do. I hated it. And they said, come along to this. And then I started watching your videos, and then I got your book, and then I listened to the Sacred Masculine podcast, and like it sounds a bit cringy, but you turned like chiropractic on for me in that sense. And any student out there, I can 100% hand on heart recommend that you go down the route of looking into seeing your university probably has a Kairos training culture. It would be stupid.
And if it doesn't, let us know how we can bring it to you. You know, I mean, that's what it's here for.
Exactly.
It's here to help inspire and help get people in the right training ground.
Like, I remember I reached out a lot to Dylan Morn and Jordan Fairley, and they helped me a lot, like throughout that period. And even Kate, like I spoke to Kate a few times, Kate Jones, and she helped out, and everyone was really helpful when I took on the facilitator role at McT. And like, they will go above and beyond to really try and help give as much resources and help out create something, or help it grow and support you. So I wanted to personally thank you for that, and for helping so many people I know for that. And without you, I might have even quit. So it's quite a cool moment. Like, I've wanted to have you on the podcast since day one. I have messaged you a few times throughout the year, and luckily we find the time that works for us both, which is cool. If you had like a bit of advice for a student who maybe is feeling like I was in year 2, or just feeling like the world's a bit against them and they don't really like chiropractic right now, what would your bit of inspiration be for them?
The first thing is remember why you started. You know, I think unfortunately chiropractic does a great job of beating the chiropractic out of you. More people go in with greater faith in the body's ability to heal than they leave with. And that shouldn't be the way. And again, that's why we exist. That Kairos wouldn't exist if chiropractic schools were doing a good job teaching people chiropractic, because I'd be doing other things.
Yeah.
And so remember why you started. and then surround yourself with like-minded individuals that are committed to seeing chiropractic expressed at the highest level. And what's that mean? I mean, I think it's always going to expand for you based on the level of education experience that you have. I can directly remember a time when I started going to these meetings called Dynamic Essentials, which was created by Dr. Sid E. Williams, who's the founder of Life University and wrote the book Lasting Purpose, and the path of success starts in the head, in the heart, and looking back to see ahead. And I started going to these meetings, and he was there at the time before he passed away. And I remember that every speaker that goes up there, there's no PowerPoints, right? Up until then, every speaker that we'd had at Life West during our Friday seminars, always PowerPoint. It looked like rehearsed, and they've done that talk a few times, and it just really wasn't inspiring to me. And so when I started going to these, and I was like, no PowerPoints, it's people speaking from the heart, and they'd speak for 30, 45 minutes. I've never seen anybody do that, right? Just go up there and just go, right? And I'm like, but one of the biggest things that I noticed and observed at that time was, one, they're fucking all in, right? Just being all in, but also like really confident in what they were doing. Like they're speaking from a knowing, not a thinking, which is much different. And I remember asking, like, what's it take, to get to that point where you can speak with so much conviction, right? With so much certainty on chiropractic. Not like, oh, I think it does this and it might help with this. No, 100% of the time, right? If you're subluxated and you get adjusted, you're gonna be better, 100%. How the fuck is that possible? And how do you get there? And the biggest thing for me is showing up. Sometimes you have to have a crazy experience. And I remember receiving my first one, right? Because every time you have one of these like big aha moments, these awakening moments, you go a little deeper in that certainty. My first one was, I'm leaving to go on a mission trip to El Salvador. This actually happened after my third quarter in chiropractic school. I went on a mission trip to El Salvador. And so before I take off to El Salvador, I went back home. So I was studying in Northern California. I'm from Southern California. I go back home and I see my dad. At the time, my dad had just had a back surgery. He actually had the back surgery before I got into chiropractic school, but he had a lot of pain and symptoms following the back surgery. He was actually on 7 different medications, and I would say somewhat addicted to opiates. And I adjusted him, and I knew he was in a lot of pain. But when I adjusted him, after I finished, I did not ask him about his pain. I looked him in his eyes to see if I got my dad back, right? Because every time I'd been talking to him, there was a gap. It was like, we call it like fuzziness. Right? It just wasn't clear. And so I just wanted to know, hey, do I have my dad here present with me, and not these medications that's taking him away from his real self? And so for that, to go home, to know my dad's in pain, but to actually have the highest value for the human connection and love, I was like, I think I'm getting closer. And so I've had multiple moments in my career, my student career, and my professional career, where I've gotten to see the power of chiropractic. I've gotten to witness it from others. And every single time that happens, you step deeper into a knowing, and you step deeper into a love for it. If you're not seeing or observing or experiencing chiropractic the way that is possible, then it's your duty to be immersed either in those texts, right? Those podcasts, or those seminars and events, so that you can be. And it's really only your responsibility. The school's not going to do it for you. And I think a lot of people get lost in that they again, you're paying all this fucking money. You would hope that they would, but the problem is they don't. Most don't. Some are better than others, but the majority don't. So
like, I'm finding a lot of people are saying you do need to have a look yourself. You need to find the truth almost outside of university, and that's really great. Like yourself, like the Kairos training culture, and these are the books that you've recommended these people to look out to. And it's exactly what we're trying to help people with here. It's a place to come to if you really like what Dr. Brett's spoken about today. Look at the resources that are in the show notes and really explore what you've been talking about. And there will be something for someone out there that resonates with them and connects with them on that level that gives them maybe a little bit of an aha moment or a little bit of intrigue to spark that passion in chiropractic so that they can dive into that and get the most out of themselves for it, which is exactly why I was doing this podcast. And it's great to have people like yourself on who have been through such a great journey in life. It's just really, really amazing. And I'm really thankful of your time. Honestly, it's great. And with the time zone and everything, I just really appreciate everything you've done for the profession and for me today and everyone listening as well. So thank you so much, Brett, for joining us.
Welcome. And make sure it's in this podcast, Dr. Leo Spears.
I'm going to put it in the show notes.
All right. So that's the name of the doctor that had the 800-bed hospital. The name of the book is the Spears Painless System. The Spears Painless System. And I also sent a YouTube link so you can actually check out the hospital that was around, I believe it was in the 50s. There's a YouTube link. So check that out if you've never seen it. Because again, what you need to be surrounded and immersed in is the depth of healing in chiropractic. If you're not seeing it in your clinic and you're not seeing it in the chiropractors local to you, then again, it becomes your duty and really an obligation to go to the places that you need to go for that. I believe that chiropractic would be better served like in an apprentice model. Right, apprentice into some level of discipleship, meaning that use exactly that. So, and why? Because unfortunately, again, who's mainly at the schools? Who's mainly teaching? It's usually not the most. I mean, with all due respect, it's usually not the most fucking inspiring people. It's people that didn't go out and crush it in practice. It's people that didn't go out and do great in business. It's people that blah 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 blah, and so now they're your faculty. And so some had, some purpose in wanting to do that. And don't get me wrong, there are a few here, there in between, but the majority of, I want to know what it's like to either run a high volume or a high result or both practice, right? Well, where the fuck is that? If you're not seeing it in your surroundings, then you need to find it and you need to spend time with those people, because I'll tell you right now, you become the energy you surround yourself with. So for all the students that are fucking listening, if the energy around you is garbage, you're garbage. Yeah. If the energy around you doesn't believe in chiropractic, you don't believe in chiropractic. You don't know it. So get around people that fucking know it. And by being around people that know it and that live it and breathe it and get to express it and showcase it time and time and time again, you watch their shit. You listen to their shit. You get around them as much as possible. And you pay the fucking money, because you're already paying your fucking school, by the way, which I think is fucking grand theft robbery. What they're charging for giving you fucking nothing. But hey, you gotta jump through your hurdle and get your certification, blah 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 blah. What you really need to do is you need to be fucking ready to serve people, because when they come see you as a chiropractor, are you a chiropractor, or are you a second-rate PT and a third-rate MD?
And they can learn that because you're coming to the UK soon. We're going to get this released in a few weeks, so you're coming to the UK in October. What are the exact dates and where are you going to be, Dr. Brett?
We gotta launch this week, bro. This is coming out now. Let's get it out. I'm coming. I'll be in the UK the 18th of October through the 22nd. I'll be the 18th in London doing a talk. I'll be the 19th in Cardiff, Wales, with Benny Matthew doing a talk. The 20th, I'm taking 1 day of preparation recovery. Then the 21st, I'm teaching a 1 day upper cervical training in Bournemouth, and then doing the KTC Kairos Training Culture Level 1 training camp the 22nd and 23rd. So we're going to get this out.
We're going to get this out this weekend.
There you go.
Perfect. All right. Amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, bro.
Hello, a quick special announcement to say that we are working alongside a blockchain expert and a designer to work on a NFT project. It's available online. You can go on OpenSea.io, join the community on Discord, and check out our Instagram and Twitter. It's 206 Bones NFT. It's a collectible series of trading cards, and it's all 206 bones of the body. For more information, have a look in the description below.